30 years at the same company.
We were really hoping for someone with more modern experience.
If you're a man over 50 and you feel like corporate America threw you away, this video is going to change how you see everything happening right now. For the last 10 years, the corporate world has been obsessed with youth. They pushed older men out the door with early retirement packages and smiles on their faces. They said we were too expensive and out of touch. They wanted digital natives who grew up with smartphones in their hands. If you're over 50, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Remember when HR sat you down and explained that the company was going in a new direction? They didn't say you were being pushed out because of your age. No, they were smarter than that. They said they were restructuring. They said they were optimizing. But we all knew what that meant. It meant younger and cheaper. They brought in consultants who talked about disruption and innovation. They made it sound like wisdom was a weakness, like your 30 years of experience was actually holding the company back. And a lot of good men believed it. They took the package. They left quietly. Well, guess what? The experiment is over, and the results are an absolute disaster. Productivity is down across almost every sector. Resilience is gone. Loyalty is a joke. And now, the very companies that pushed you out are quietly begging you to come back. They're not announcing it in press releases. They're not admitting they were wrong. But behind closed doors, in boardrooms across America, they're asking the same question. Where did all the grown-ups go? If this sounds like your life, you're not alone. A lot of men your age are carrying the same quiet frustration. The same question, did my best years already pass? And I'm here to tell you something important. They didn't. In fact, your most profitable years might be right ahead of you. I've seen it happen, and I've spoken to the men who lived it. Let me tell you about Mike. Mike is 56 years old. He spent 28 years at a regional manufacturing company. He worked his way up from the floor to senior operations manager. In 2021, they offered him early retirement. Said they were bringing in a younger team with fresh ideas. Mike took the deal. He thought he was done. He spent 2 years playing golf, doing projects around the house, and honestly, feeling a little lost. Then last spring, his phone rang. It was his old company. The new operations manager had quit after 18 months. Projects were behind schedule. Clients were complaining. They asked if Mike would come back, not as an employee, as a consultant. 3 days a week at double his old salary. Mike thought about it for exactly 1 day, and then he said yes. But he did it on his terms. He works Tuesday through Thursday. He doesn't attend staff meetings unless they're critical. He solves problems, he mentors the younger guys, and he goes home. And you know what? He's never been happier or better paid. That's the story playing out across America right now. And it's happening because companies are learning a hard lesson about what really matters. Let's look at what's happening in the modern workforce. We're seeing a generation that has never been taught how to handle friction. And I don't mean that as an attack. It's not their fault. They were raised differently. This is a generation that grew up with participation trophies and algorithms that show them exactly what they want to see. They've been protected from failure their entire lives. And now they're in the workplace, and reality doesn't have a customer service department. Think about what we dealt with when we were coming up. If your boss yelled at you, you figured out what you did wrong, and you fixed it. If a client was difficult, you smiled, stayed professional, and closed the deal. If the computers crashed, you found another way to get it done. Nobody handed you a manual on resilience. You just learned it because you had to. But today, if the Wi-Fi goes down, productivity stops. If a client sends a blunt email, we've got employees needing time to recover. If they don't get constant praise, they think they're failing. They have technical skills, absolutely. But when the pressure is on, when things get messy, many of them struggle. They were raised in a system that told them feelings matter more than results. So when the real world shows up with its deadlines and difficult people, they're often unprepared. We didn't need wellness apps in the 1980s. We just got the job done. And companies are starting to realize that you can't code work ethic into an algorithm. These things are built over years of showing up, getting knocked down, and showing up again the next day. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. The younger workforce has been sold a lie. They've been told that work should be fulfilling, that your job should be your passion. And when reality doesn't match that fantasy, they quit. They call it knowing their worth. But what it often comes down to is an inability to push through when things stop being fun. The average tenure for a worker under 30 is less than 3 years at a single company. 3 years! We used to call that breaking in. Now that's the entire career arc before they bounce to the next thing. And companies are bleeding money trying to train people who leave the moment they get a LinkedIn message from a recruiter. This is the cost of the youth obsession. But here's where the story gets good. There's a new term floating around HR departments. It's called the Great Unretirement. In 2024 and into 2025, hiring managers are privately admitting that a 25-year-old with a perfect resume is a gamble. But a 55-year-old with real experience is a sure thing. They're realizing that the guy who took early retirement 3 years ago might be exactly what they need right now. Not as a favor to him, but because he's the only one who knows how to steady the ship. If you're over 50, listen closely. Think about what you bring to the table that a younger worker simply can't. You've been through recessions. You've seen companies almost go under and then claw their way back. You've worked with difficult clients, terrible bosses, bad products, and you still found a way to deliver. You know how to read a room. You know when to push and when to hold back. You've got pattern recognition that only comes from decades in the game. You know what a real crisis looks like. You were there in 2008 when the economy collapsed. You were there after 9/11 when everything changed overnight. You've adapted more times than these younger workers can imagine. And every time you adapted, you didn't need a support group. You just figured it out. And here's the thing they're figuring out the hard way. When a crisis hits, what saves you is someone who's been there before. Someone who doesn't panic. Someone who can look at the chaos and say, all right, here's what we do. That's you. That's what you've always been, the adult in the room. Let me tell you about John. John is 58. He spent his entire career in commercial construction, started as an estimator, worked his way up to senior project manager. In 2022, his company offered early retirement to cut costs. John took it. He figured he'd do some consulting work on the side, enjoy his grandkids, take it easy. 6 months later, his old company called. They had landed a major hospital renovation project, $15 million. The new project manager was overwhelmed. The client was unhappy. They were 3 weeks behind schedule and the budget was already in trouble. They asked John to come back and take over. He said no at first. He was retired. He was done with the stress. They called back a week later. They doubled the offer. They said he could work remotely 3 days a week. They gave him complete authority over the project. John thought about it and realized something. They weren't asking him to save his career. They were asking him to save theirs. So he took the deal. He came in, restructured the timeline, had some difficult conversations with the client, got the crew back on track, and delivered the project 2 weeks early and under budget. The company paid him more in 6 months than he made in his last 2 years as an employee. That's the power shift happening right now. And if you've been sitting at home wondering if you still have value, let me make this clear. You are not obsolete. You are the contingency plan. You are the insurance policy that companies are finally realizing they need. But here's my warning, and this is critical. Do not go back to the way things were. If they call you back, if they reach out, if they suddenly remember your name after years of silence, you do not go back as an employee. You do not go back on their terms. You go back as a consultant. You set your hours. You name your price. You make it clear that your expertise is not a salary anymore. It's a premium service. You're not building a career at this point. You are renting out your wisdom. And wisdom is expensive. Think about it this way. They pushed you out when they thought they didn't need you. They hired someone younger for half the price. Well, now they've learned that cheap has a cost. And if they want you back, they're going to pay what you're actually worth. Set your boundaries from day one. You're available 3 days a week, not 5. You work on projects, not on payroll. You deliver results, and then you go home. You don't attend every meeting. You don't participate in team-building exercises. You show up, you solve the problem, and you send an invoice. That's the new relationship. And here's what's beautiful about this moment. You've got leverage, real leverage. They need you more than you need them. You've already lived the corporate grind. You've already proven yourself. You don't need validation. You don't need a promotion. You need respect and fair compensation. And if they can't offer that, you walk. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice. You get a call from your old company. They want to bring you in for a special project. They're struggling with something. Here's what you don't do. You don't get excited and say yes immediately. You treat it like the business transaction it is. You ask about scope. You ask about timeline. You ask about budget. And then you quote them a rate that makes them pause. When they push back on the price, you stay calm. You explain that you're bringing decades of experience that their current team doesn't have. You're bringing the ability to solve this problem quickly without the learning curve. You're bringing insurance against failure. And if that's not worth the investment, you completely understand and you wish them luck. 9 times out of 10, they'll agree to your terms because they're calling you because they're out of options. This is your second half. This is the part of life where you don't have to hustle for scraps. You've paid your dues. You've earned the right to be selective. The companies that treated experience like a liability are now realizing it's the most valuable thing they lost. And the smart ones among you are going to make them pay to get it back. You've spent 30 or 40 years playing by their rules. You showed up early. You stayed late. You missed your kids' baseball games for client meetings. You took on extra work without extra pay because that's what loyal employees did. And then, when they decided you were too expensive, they cut you loose without a second thought. Well, now the tables have turned. You don't owe them anything. What you owe yourself is the recognition that your time and knowledge have value, real value. And in a market where experience is suddenly scarce, that value is higher than it's been in decades. So enjoy this. Enjoy watching the same people who showed you the door now asking if you're available for a call. Enjoy setting terms that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. Enjoy the fact that all those years of showing up is finally paying off. You're not obsolete. You're the backup plan that society desperately needs right now. You are the steady hand in the storm. You are what competence looks like. And the second half? It's looking pretty profitable. If you believe experience beats algorithms, hit like and subscribe now.